Are we ready now?
You're
Well,
live.
no, it's spinning.
No,
still.
you're live.
You're live now.
Yep.
Okay.
Hi.
Bohemian Rhapsody aficionado, you are. All right, we're jumping right in. We're not waiting for anybody.
Yeah,
Ready?
let's roll.
Okay. Well, welcome back to Labs Live and happy 2020. It's a new year, Toby. I'm Dan. Toby. And today we're going to be talking about design sprints with Ryan Petrill. I think I got the name right. I'm looking at a nod. I got it right. Nailed it. Before we get into that, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the bell icon to be notified, and also check out our other social channels because we put out a lot of content, especially on LinkedIn, Twitter, the Gram.
The Gram.
As Toby
My
likes
fave.
to call it his favorite. There's also a chat room during this live stream. So if you have a question for Toby, Ryan, or
Dan.
dare I say myself,
Yeah.
you may post that in there and we'll do our best to answer that. Dave will read them off. We've had one. It was fun.
We've had several. But go
We've
on.
had one. It was a good time. Before we get into that, one of the reasons we haven't been around, obviously, you had the holidays, you had the new year, but also we were in Las Vegas at CES. What was one of the things that caught your attention at CES?
So I really enjoyed seeing like the future of technology, but I have affinity for technology that's very practical. So there's this company based in Zeeland, Michigan called GENTEX that was trying to reimagine the surgery room and kind of incorporate the lights into the surgery room so the surgeon can control like the lights with a wand. And I thought that was very practical. I was very moved by it, but I might be biased because I really like medicine in general.
Well, it's actually kind of fun just to see technology that could actually work for a good reason
That could, yeah.
and could actually come out.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because at CES, it's the land of connected things that no one needs.
Yeah, correct.
But when I think about CES, I think actually a little bit more about the relationships. So less about the show when we're out there and the things that we're seeing, but more the fact that there are so many people, both clients and potential clients for us, that are there. There are a lot of relationships that we actually have in Detroit that are great to connect with there. So it was fun. We tend to be on the same flights every year with people, so it's great to talk to them.
Yeah.
And now we're back in Detroit, and so we're
Fun
doing this
times.
show, not short.
It's a short show.
It's a short show. It might be. Let's welcome Ryan. Let's talk about design sprints. Come on, Ryan.
Hey, Ryan.
If you can't hear, there was a massive applause behind the camera. It was incredible. Anyways, Ryan's a delivery lead at Detroit Labs and is one of our folks that has run a few design sprints so far. So give us an idea. What is a design sprint?
Sure. So design sprint's a 5-day process. It originated at Google Ventures. And it's really aimed at solving the critical business problems that you may have. And you bring together a team of designers, business leaders, engineers into one room, and you dedicate time to solving those problems. And so through the 5 days, you'll define your problems. You'll start coming up with potential solutions. We prototype it out, and then we put that in front of potential users so that way you get the feedback quickly that you can start iterating on. And so it's a really good way to start streamlining that original process that may take, a really long time to go through, like many meetings with, managers and the hierarchy to try to get approvals on things. You can start streamlining that in a week. And two things I like to point out about design sprints is one, it's a really easy, low risk way to start getting into new ventures, whether that's a new product, a new business, large feature adding onto an existing product. You don't have to commit all that development time. Instead, you're committing a smaller amount to try to, get those answers faster through the sprint. So.
And who uses a design sprint? Is it just like a small niche thing that just the startups can use?
No, it can be, any size company. So there's no too small of a company. There's no too large of a company. And it's not industry specific either. So you'll see it across all the different industries. I think that you'll see small companies, mainly like startups that maybe have a new business idea and they want to further define that. A sprint's good for them to start talking through what that potential product offering could be. And you see large, like Fortune 500 companies. Lego's a good example of a company that started incorporating design sprints. They're a huge company, and then they started with one sprint to try it out, to start creating some of their new Lego kits. And then today they run like 150 design sprints internally a year.
Wow.
So it can scale as well. And we here have run sprints with startups that are trying to launch the new products, and we've run them with larger companies as well.
So not just apps.
Nope, not just apps either. So we will tend to focus on mobile apps or websites, but it can also be run to do like physical products as well.
That's awesome.
So you said 5 days.
Yep.
Right. So are you telling me that it only takes 1 week and then you've solved all of your problems and you have a product ready to be built?
No, not exactly. So what's going to happen in that 5 weeks is we're going to start defining what that opportunity that we want to focus on is. But the core thing to get out of it is that we're going to be focusing on like the main aspects that's going to deliver that value. And so the sprint framework is set up in a way to where you start broad and start honing in on those specific features. So as a group, we'll start prioritizing what we want the sprint to focus on, and then what we're prototyping out is going to be that. So at the end of the day, like our prototype's going to be, our educated best guess at what we think the solution is, and then when we get that feedback, it's going to provide you direction on where to go. So it's not going to be a silver bullet, but it's going to get you, to where you want to be much faster than if you were to invest the original methods of product development.
So I want to get in and start breaking down every single day, but before we do that, if I'm a company that wants to do this, what do I need to know before jumping in? What do I need to have prepared before engaging with either Detroit Labs or performing one of these myself?
So first, you need to have at least a general idea of what the opportunity is that you're coming in to solve. We're going to have a much more in-depth discussion during the sprint and to prioritize what that's going to be. But it's good to have that conversation beforehand so that we can start to get up to speed on our end.
Gotcha.
The other thing is that you need to make sure that you understand the time and dedication that it takes. So the sprint, while we say it's 5 days, one of the questions we usually get is, do I have to be there all 5 days? And the answer is no. So we have an adapted sprint. And we require that the people in the sprint are there for at least the first 2 days. That's where a lot of the core value comes out of, like the contextual information that we need. So we need to make sure, one, that the right people are in the room. So we want to make sure we have representation from the team. And then two, we want to make sure that the time is available from those people. And so we want to be able to dedicate those full 2 days to this problem.
Yeah.
And then after that, our team can start prototyping and testing, and then we'll get back with our results. But it's not going to require that full 5 day span.
So what kind of roles make up like a design sprint team?
Yeah, so we'll have, the maximum number of people advised in the sprint is going to be 7. And so of that, you're going to have a handful from the client that's going to be able to talk through, if there's an existing product, what's the user base, what's the current flow like, people that can talk to like the decisions that have been made thus far. You're going to want someone who can make decisions on the direction the product's going to go. So every sprint's going to have a decider in it, and that means that decider is going to have the ultimate call on when we start like solutioning out ideas, what direction we're going to take. So that's what we need from the client side. From our side, we'll also provide product designers. We can have engineers if we start talking through some of the technical capabilities. We'll have certified design sprint facilitators. So you'll have a mix of different roles and disciplines in it.
All right, so bought in, ready to go, teams assembled. I do like that. One of the things that we've worked really hard at Detroit Labs is taking what is an ideal process and slightly modifying it for realistic, real-world type challenges, and that's the 5 days dedicated down to 2 days from the client because realistically a lot of things happen, and so schedules and businesses have to keep moving. So I like that, but. Now, I'm bought in. I've got the right people at the table. Let's go through every single day. What happens day one?
Yeah. So day one's kind of split up into 2 parts. So the first half of the day is really about defining and understanding the problems and opportunities that, why everyone is here. The second half of the day is split solutioning. So in that first half, we'll start it off with getting everyone in the room. We'll start doing interviews with the business leaders in the room. And that's an opportunity actually where, if you're a participant in the sprint, you'll be in these interviews, but it's also an opportunity to start bringing in people who might have, more narrow focus at your company as well. So we can bring those people in, but it's just really for us to all get on the same page of what the problem is that we're talking about. So we'll ask questions to try to get a better understanding, how the current flow of the app or of the process that you're trying to solve is working. And then we start writing out like what are the problems then that we could start tackling in this sprint, and what do we want to focus our efforts on. So that's like the first half. And then in the second half, we've come together, we've decided on those, we've talked through like this is what we want to prioritize and focus on. And now we start coming up with potential solutions. And so this is where we start incorporating some market research. So we look at what competitors are doing. We ourselves have our own expertise, and the client, you have your own business expertise. And so we come together and start coming up and drawing out potential product solutions, and we'll come up with concepts that look like, maybe the core pieces of a user flow that we want to incorporate into this prototype. And so we'll vote on those we'll create those throughout day one and then move into day two.
So day one's very much unpacking, establishing that foundation, the ground rules, if you will, for how this thing's going to go. So let's jump into day two. What does that look like?
Yeah, so day two starts out with basically voting on the solutions that we've come up with at the end of day one. So at the end of day one, everyone's put together their best ideas for potential solutions to the problems that we've decided upon. And then in day two, we'll kick it off and we'll go around the room and start looking at what everyone has created. Then we'll start voting on them, and ultimately we'll pick one that we want to move forward with that's going to lead into our prototype. So after the decider has chosen which solution they'd like to move forward with, then we'll actually do a more in-depth round of whiteboarding, where we'll take that concept as our starting point, but then build out screen by screen, okay, what is this prototype going to actually look like? And that way it informs our designers, and the next day, this is everything that needs to be in the prototype. These are the interactions we want. This is the data that we want. We want it to be as realistic as possible. So the majority of day two is really refining and defining out what that prototype is going to look like.
And help me understand a little bit what a prototype is, because I think you're about to cover that in day three, but just kind of a flavor of what that might look like.
Yeah, so a prototype's just going to be like as real of it, like trying to get something as close to what the end product might be. And so design tools now allow us to create experiences that can mimic, really mimic how an app would function if you were to actually code it without requiring any code. So for us, it might be designing out a web experience or a mobile app experience, but you can actually, for a mobile app, for instance, the prototype would actually be on your phone. You can launch it, you can go through you can interact with it, you can scroll, you can go through different flows with it. So it's going to allow you to put something in front of a user that looks real without investing all of that money up front to actually build it out.
And let's expand a little bit on day three, because I think that's where there's a little bit of a shift at this point, right? That's the day where the client is not as involved, right?
Correct, yes. So day three, the client no longer needs to be on site, and this is really for our team to focus on building out the prototype. So it's pretty much the designers are pretty much heads down all day building out the prototype based on the screens that we've drawn up from day two. We'll ask the client questions throughout the day to any clarifying questions, but other than that, it's really just starting out and okay, we've got the flow down. Now we'll start adding some of the visual elements to it, making sure the interactions look right, and just polishing everything up so that we can get ready for user testing.
So the team's heads down, working hard on this prototype. Prototype is getting close to being ready. What does day four look like?
Day four is user testing. So we come in, we make sure that the prototype is as good as it can be, and then we start putting it in front of actual users. So working with the client, we'll start identifying, okay, what's the target audience for whatever you're trying to build, and then during that sprint process, the facilitator is going to be recruiting a group of users to then test out the prototype. So all of day four, the facilitator will be moderating user testing sessions where users will start using the app. We'll take notes on, what do they like? What do they not like? Is there anything confusing? Is it solving the problems that we identified in day one? And we start taking notes on all of that. And we have 5 testers that we run the app with, or that we run the prototype through on day 4.
So why 5? Why 5 people?
Yeah. So five is the number where you start to see patterns emerging when you're testing. So there's a publication from the Nielsen Norman Group that you'll find 85% of your usability issues with 5 users. And so it's a good amount to where you start seeing people going through the app and suggesting things, or either liking or not liking things. And once you see enough of those happening, it gives you a good sense. Then when you start having when we're done with testing, we can start providing recommendations based on those.
In common real life scenarios, sometimes you have clients who might think or believe that I know a lot about my users, I have analytics. Is this step still necessary? Why do we do user testing?
Yeah, it is still necessary because, no matter how much you know your user, you're normally not the user. And even if you are, you're a single point. And so it's critical to put your app in front of users. If you do, similar to when you have, five users will get you 85%, 0 will get you 0%. So we're putting it in front of people so that you get some of that more information so you can have a broader range of input.
Yeah.
So we've identified the problem, we've identified the prototype, we've built the prototype, we've done some user testing, a little bit of iterative user testing to really understand if that works. Now we're going into day 5. What does day 5 look like?
Day 5 is going to be the team will get together internally and we'll summarize all the findings from user testing. We'll put together a sprint report with the findings and the prototype, and then we'll hold a meeting with the client to discuss then how the sprint went. So we'll do a recap. We'll walk the client through the prototype that's been created. We'll walk through the user testing results, and then we'll also talk through our recommendations based on those findings. And from the client perspective, all of that is then delivered to you as well. So you get the prototype, you get all the results. So if you want to run more testing, if you need to show that to people within the organization to further sell your idea, all of that becomes yours that you can then, share as you will.
Is this on-site as well, or is it remote friendly?
We prefer on-site. There have been design sprints run that have been remote friendly, but I know from experience we've done some, and it's definitely smoother when people are on site, at least for those first 2 days.
Gotcha.
So everyone's tired at this point, end of day 5.
Yeah.
Probably happy of the outcome and of the amount of work that went into it. After this is all done, are you ready to jump in right away and build that thing that you prototyped? Is that the next step, or is there something completely different there?
So it depends on the results of the sprint. So the sprint's not going to be your 100% guaranteed answer to get everything right. In reality, what it's going to do is allow you to take a stab at something that you want to pursue, and then it's going to give you the opportunity to use those results to decide, do I want to continue pursuing this based on those results? And that may look like an iteration sprint where we follow up with another design sprint-esque like workshop to go through those findings and create another prototype to further get those testing results done. It might be, if it's a larger project, more into like a discovery and user research phase where we start building out like new projects or new potential products. If it is like very well defined and it's maybe a smaller feature that you're building, you could go into a product phase, but typically it will result in some sort of follow-up that's going to require some further definition, but it does get you much farther on that path than if you were to not do it.
So what's your favorite thing about design sprints, or most significant takeaway from them?
I think that one thing I've seen with design sprints is like how hyper-focused you become, because in this day and age, very rarely do you have the opportunity to set aside that much time to solve a problem. And so I've seen when you get the right people in the room that are spending those core 2 days to solve this problem, we limit the distractions. So phones, outside meetings, etc. If this is truly a core problem, then we should be able to devote this time to it. And so much can happen in that small amount of time that you don't even realize, because we're constantly having to switch between things. It's pretty amazing to see the results that come out of that.
Well, we've had design sprints go a couple different ways too, right? We've had some that have moved on to a discovery phase. We've said, this is a really great problem that we can potentially solve and build something around, so let's move that into a discovery phase. And then we've also seen some where it's like, this maybe isn't the best problem to be focusing on right now. And both of those are successes, right? Because one group is marching towards a potential great product. The other one is they're avoiding investment into something that likely would not have been successful anyway. So design sprints are really neat because in a lot of ways, no matter what comes out of it, it's
You
success.
win.
Yeah, it's kind of like a win-win in that situation. All right, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us, breaking down the 5 days that go into a design sprint.
Thank you.
Design sprints are incredibly valuable. Like we said, it is a win-win. Sometimes you move forward and you build the product. Sometimes you say, you know what, let's pause, let's rethink this, which also it avoids lengthy and heavy investment. So design sprints are part of an engagement that we have called our Get Started engagements, design sprints, discovery phases, which we talked about a little bit and we'll talk about more later on, but also our proof of technology engagements. It's all part of this whole Get Started package that we talk about a lot because, quite honestly, getting started on a digital solution, on a product is the hardest thing, right? That first step is extremely difficult, and the design sprint allows for that baby step before you have to learn how to crawl and before you learn how to run.
And just validating whatever your plans are.
Yep. There will be a link in the description to learn more about those Get Started engagements. And as we're wrapping this up, I got to say thank you to everybody that worked extremely hard on this. Thank you to Ryan, Tobi, Dave, Diana, Elise, Jacqueline, Derek, not Billy, but he's got his headphones on, and he always likes to come and watch us, which is really beautiful. And we have a lovely audience here that I will tell you is about 50 people. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon. Don't forget to go check us out on all of our other social channels. We have a lot of different content, different video content going in, especially LinkedIn, some lovely photos of Tobi on Instagram, and there's always a little bit of love on Twitter, not so much on the Facebook.
No Facebook.
No, we don't do that. All right.
You want to answer a question?
Oh, we have questions?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Let's go.
We got way too excited. That shows that we've only had one before.
Can you do back-to-back or back-to-back-to-back design sprints?
Love it.
Yeah, so actually one of the typical patterns that we'll see is we'll do one design sprint and then we'll follow that up with what's called an iteration sprint, because the findings from the first one will start to bring to light some of the questions that maybe our target's here and we got like really close. We got really close to the target, but we see that based on the feedback how we can incorporate some of that to get even closer. So we'll do an iteration sprint and incorporate that feedback and then start prototyping out from there.
That's a great question.
Were there any others?
No, that's it.
Two total, Tobi. All right. Well, that's good. Hey, you have the badge
Two
of
in a
having.
row.
Yeah.
Back
okay.
to back
Yeah. All right.
shows.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy. All right. You have that badge now. All right. Thanks for tuning in. We will talk to you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.